Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Oh, this is Lady Victoria here this evening with Victoria School of Etiquette. It's 10 o'clock, which means it is time for bedtime chronicles. Bedtime chronicles. So come on in. Those of you that are not quite in the bed yet, come on in and tag a friend. Tag a friend and come on in and be a part of our viewing audience on this evening. I will do my best not to be long. Subject matter is interesting and all over the news, but I'm really not here to go into all of the details of it. But stay with me for a minute. Invite a friend and you will see where we're going. Again, for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Lady Victoria with Victoria School of Etiquette. And tonight is our Bedtime Chronicle series. It is an ongoing series of information, inspiration, and stories that I feel compelled to share with you on a regular basis. So here we are tonight. And tonight I've titled our subject matter, Bedtime Chronicles of Why Didn't Tell, Why Didn't Report. Ladies and gentlemen, this information is an ongoing saga. And it's not new news, but it's constantly in the news. Something that we hear about and that we read about all the time now on a regular basis. And I'm taking this from the MeToo Chronicles. The MeToo hashtag. MeToo hashtag, which we know was revitalized in 2017 by Alyssa Milano. But the hashtag was originally started in 2006 by Tarana Burke, who is a social activist, was and still is a social activist and community organizer. And she began using the phrase Me Too in 2006 when MySpace was around. MySpace was around. I think MySpace actually predated Facebook at the time, but it was a social network platform, MySpace, and she used it as part of a campaign to really promote and bring empowerment through empathy among women of color, especially among women of color who have been sexually assaulted or sexually abused, particularly those of the underserved or underprivileged community. Now, it began with her when a girl that was 13 years old came and told her that she had been sexually assaulted. And that's when she was inspired to begin using this phrase, but she later reported that she was unable to respond to this 13-year-old girl who confided in her that she had been sexually assaulted. And she said later she wished that she had simply told the girl, Me Too. She wished that she had been able to tell her story. And today there are hundreds, thousands, and millions of women and men, mostly women though, that are sexually assaulted and sexually abused every day. Thank you, Lisa Laude. That are sexually abused every single day, but people don't talk about it. And it has created a sisterhood of awareness. It has brought awareness, and I am grateful for that. I'm grateful that it has had that effect on society. We had the Me Too movement, we had the Time's Up movement, and now we have the one, like I said, Why I Didn't Tell, Why I Didn't Report. Why is that? It showed up in my Twitter feed today, and that's what inspired me to do this subject matter on tonight. It showed up in my Twitter feed, several stories. I read through probably a dozen or so of them before I really literally tore myself away, because it's tormenting to a degree to read these stories, to hear about these stories, and realize that after awareness has been made and people share their stories with one another, And we feel bad for one another. We feel bad for our sisters and our brothers. And I don't mean this, I don't mean in a color way. I don't mean that in that way. I just mean that we're sisters and brothers because we've been exposed to the same thing. And so they're telling their story without really telling their story. And I too have a story to tell. You'll hear about that later. But they're sharing it in a place where they feel it's a safe zone and where they can talk about it. But that's all they're doing. It's just, it's so heart-wrenching to talk about this because you're telling your story probably in a safe place, but are you receiving healing? And I guess that's really the point that I'm making. Are you receiving healing after you've told your story? I remember when I said again, Alyssa Milano revived the MeToo hashtag in 2017 when the whole Harvey Weinstein thing broke loose. And she did it as a way, again, to bring awareness and to bring empathy about what was going on. And so this was the Hollywood. This was the Hollywood approach to it. And I'm sure that she meant for it to be more than just that. It did cause hundreds of people to come forth and to tell their stories about being sexually assaulted or sexually molested by others in Hollywood, some of the powers that be, and they attacked those that I guess that they felt that were less powerful than them, because you know what? These kinds of attacks is not about sex at all. It's really not about sex, but it is about power. It is about exerting power and authority over someone that you feel is not your equal, that you can do this to that person and get away with it. Threats are made, threats even unto death are made to the victims by their attackers. They tell them what more they would do to them if they talk about it, if they tell anyone. It is really shameful. It is one of the most degrading and demeaning things that can happen to an individual. And it doesn't matter if you're female or male. And I do include the men because I admire Terry Crews for coming forth in Hollywood to talk about his sexual assault. Men don't talk about it. Men don't want to say that they were abused either by another man or by a woman. Men don't want to talk about that. No more so than any woman wants to share her story. But this hashtag that showed up in my Twitter feed on today, why I didn't tell, why I didn't report. The lead story was from a gentleman that began to tell why he didn't tell. Because he was 13 at the time. Because it was someone that he admired. Because it was his priest. Because he thought no one would believe him. Because he thought that he would get expelled. Because he thought it was the wrong thing to do. We have hundreds of reasons. Collectively, we have thousands of reasons of why we didn't tell, why we didn't report it. Because it was a family member. Because it was someone that you didn't know. Because you were ashamed. Because you were embarrassed. Because, and it goes on and on and on of why you didn't report it. You thought no one would believe you. And oftentimes, people don't believe us. People don't believe when their 9-year-old daughter comes and says that a family member assaulted them or a family friend. Moms, why don't we believe our daughters? Why will we take someone else's word over our own child, daughter or son? Why do we do that? We've heard enough about it in recent years to where we should be brave enough to stand up and fight for the right of our children to share this indecency. But oftentimes, as moms, still push back. Or dads, you push back. Why? Because sometimes the person that has committed this atrocious crime against a minor is a person that you also respect. Maybe it is a school teacher. Maybe it is a priest. Maybe it is a person of the cloth. Maybe it is a spiritual person, a person of clergy. And you would never think that they would do that to a child, and especially your child. Why your child? Out of all the other children. But how do you know that it's not just your child? And oftentimes, unfortunately, it isn't just your child. It's children that are suffering through this. And they hold it for years. The gentleman whose post showed up in my Twitter feed on this afternoon, when I discovered it, he had been holding his story for 20 years. He said for 20 years, he didn't report it. He didn't say anything. There were a lot of 20-year people. There were some that were 10. I don't think I saw anyone that was under 10 years. 10 years is a long time. 20 years is a long time. 30 years, 40 years. Some of the research I've been doing about battered women, women that are battered in different ways, sexually, emotionally, physically, they have held on to it often, sometimes for the entire marriage, and they've been married over 20 years, over 30 years. And they hold these stories because they are afraid, because they don't feel like that there's anyone in their corner, because you don't feel like that there's anyone that is going to believe you. There isn't anyone that's going to come to your rescue. And so you hold it for years. But what does it do to the person? What does it do to the victim when they hold on to it for that long of a time? You hold on to it for years and years and years, and you don't tell anyone. And you sort of move on with your life. But moving on doesn't mean that you've gotten over it. It doesn't mean that you are healed. It doesn't mean that you are delivered from this thing, this atrocity that has happened to you. Who can you go to physically? Do we get therapy? Oftentimes not. Not in the African American communities, or not in the underserved or underprivileged community. Who's there to counsel? Who's there to walk you through it? Who's there to talk you through it? The MeToo hashtags, I'm not against them. The why didn't I tell, why didn't I report, time's up, all of the hashtags that have brought awareness, I am grateful for that. Because it has made us recognize as a nation that this is a global problem. It brings awareness, but does it also bring healing? Who's there to offer therapy, individual or group therapy, for the women that have gone through this and that have held it in for 20 years? Do you know what that's like? Let me share a little bit with you what it's like. It's like a cancer that eats away at you, that it eats away at your insides. It erodes your self-esteem, your sense of value, your sense of worth, and your sense of importance. It closes your mouth and constricts your throat. Not only so that you can't tell, but neither can you breathe. Neither can you breathe. You cannot just walk up and tell someone. unless you have been through this demeaning, devastating, morally and criminally episode in your life, you don't really know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to carry it for years. And you go on and you meet someone special. And perhaps you marry. But you never told your spouse what happened to you when you were 9 or 12 or 18 or 23 or 30. Whenever it happened, but you were unable to share it. The demoralization that happens to your character, to your mindset, you feel your integrity is compromised. You don't feel always completely safe. Can I begin to share with you the myriad of emotions that you go through when this happens to you? And so what happens when you do tell? Because sometimes you do tell. And no one believes you. And that silences you even the more. Because oftentimes the person that you tell is a person that you trust. You trust them to believe you. You trust them to keep your secret. You trust them to help you. You trust them to encourage you. You trust them to be a shoulder. You trust them to be a voice, to be an advocate, to be an encourager. You trust them to cry with you. You trust that they will help you find some kind of peace through this, because it's still painful. No matter how many years go by and you don't report it, it still hurts. It's still there. It could be something that's said. It could be a way that a person reaches for you, a person touches you, that brings it all back to you just like that in a flash. And you relive in that moment yet again. But you still can't tell. It does something to the psyche of a person. It affects you in a psychological and physiological way that makes you hide. Sexual abuse is not new. It's not something that has just happened in the 21st century. It's been going on for years. And I dare say to you that if you were to take a private survey of your circle of family and friends, you might be surprised at the results. You might be surprised to find out that maybe this has happened to a family member, a sibling, a cousin, a niece. Is much more common than we think. And all the hashtags, MeToo, Time's Up, Why Didn't Tell, Why Didn't Report, and the many others that have come out, that have been birthed through all of this foolishness. They're great for bringing awareness, but what are we doing to bring wholeness to the victims? Now, I know that there was a fund that was set up for the victims, Harvey Weinstein and others. There was financial support was set aside for them so that they could get counseling, so that they could go to their doctors, they could go to their therapists. These accounts were set up to offset the funding so that these women wouldn't have to come out of their pockets to pursue healing. This is what was done in a community of people that likely already make 6 and 7 figures. What about your average everyday working woman? She has 5 children. She's a single mom. She works a job where she gets paid $10, maybe $15 an hour, somewhere between there. More likely $10 to $12 an hour. She may or may not be getting any assistance from the state as far as TANF is concerned. She may or may not have a link card. But either way, she's a single mom with 5 children, struggling to make it on her own. Who set aside money for her? She wasn't assaulted by Harvey or Bill Cosby or any of the other names. Tavis Smiley. I have a list of names here. I really don't want to go down it. Russell Simmons, Jeffrey Tambor, Al Franken, Roy Moore, and of course Brett Kavanaugh, who's heading the list of sexual offenders today in the news every day. They weren't assaulted by any of those men. They were not assaulted by a political figure, by a celebrity, or by any high-ranking official. It was Joe Blow on the street, grabbed him from behind, dragged him in an alley, or under a bridge, or sometimes out in the open on an L platform with people watching. Who's going to help her heal? Who's going to give her money to go and talk to a therapist or a doctor? Who's going to pay her doctor bill when she goes to the emergency room and they run a battery of tests, and one of the tests comes back later to say that she's contracted some sexually transmitted disease? STD, STI. Who's paying for that? Who's going to be there at night when she's crying into her pillow? She hasn't told her boyfriend, her significant other, because she's too ashamed, she's too embarrassed. Or maybe she did. And maybe he was a good guy and he was supportive and said, babe, we can get through this. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he considered her then spoiled goods. And maybe he walked away. Who's going to help her tell her 5 children? Who's going to advise her on what she should say, or how she should handle it, or if she should even tell her children? What if when she went to the hospital to make her report, she got a real good look at her assailant And she was able to give a good descriptive to the police. And maybe they caught her assailant. And maybe it's on the news. Who's going to be there to help defend her children when they go to school the next day? And their mom's picture was plastered all over the news. Or their mom's description was plastered all over the news. Who's going to comfort those children? Where's the funding to help them get through what happened to their mother? Who's there to tell the mom that it wasn't her fault? Where's Harvey's money then? And all of the others that put up funding to help those women. Why is there such a divide in our society today? Is it really true? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer? We brought awareness, but who's bringing healing? Where's the doctor or the psychiatrist or the psychologist that's going to give of him or herself to the community of underserved, underprivileged women that are being abused? Where are the doctors and the psychiatrists and the psychologists that's going to give of their time to the children of the victim? Who's going to help us get over this? Now, for all the saved and sanctified folk, y'all might not like me saying this. I'm just saying, if the shoe fits, wear it. Say, well, you know, baby, you're just going to pray for healing. I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely positively agree with you. And I will touch and agree with you in prayer that there is healing. It's available. How does that mom access it? She's not churched. He said, well, you know, prayer is just communication between you and God. So just talk to God. You can and you should, and he will heal you. It is there for you to receive. But what if you don't know how to access it? That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Rashonda. Welcome, lady. Thank you for being here. Who's going to be there to walk that mom through so that she knows how to? I've talked to God countless times about many of things. Healing didn't always come the way I thought it would. Sometimes healing didn't come. Is it because I couldn't forgive myself? I had barriers up. I just didn't know. I was too deep in to the shame. I was too deep into rejection. Whatever the things that we church people say to other people, and we say it to each other. What do we say to that mom that's been abused? And she doesn't know how to reach God. Her hurt is too big. She doesn't know how to get past it. How long do we hang in there with her? Do we eventually just say, baby, you just keep on praying. You just keep on praying now. God's going to work it out for you. Are we willing to be down in the trenches with her until she gets her breakthrough? What happens when you tell your religious leader? What happens when you tell your pastor? What happens when you tell your bishop? What happens when you share it and then you're told it's probably something that you did? You're a pastor. What do we do with that? It had to be something that you said or something that you did. When you're told it's your fault, it's never a woman's fault being sexually assaulted, being molested, being harassed. It is never the victim's fault. As I said at the beginning of the post, incidents like that is not about the sex. We don't want to talk about it in church work. It's not talked about often. Or when it is talked about, it's sometimes talked about inappropriately or in a way that doesn't offer healing and restitution. But we don't want to speak the truth of it. Rape happened in the Bible. I said this is not new. This is not something that just started happening in 2017 or 2006. It's been going on since the beginning of time. But we do not want to address it. We want to turn a blind eye as if it is not happening. What only happens to them, and they think it only happens to us. But when there's a role reversal, nobody wants to cross the divide to be of a help to each other. Bringing awareness is one thing. Doing something about it is one thing. Are we willing to change laws? Are we willing to lobby for that? Are we willing, people of God, to take the authority and their power and the dominion that we should have in the earth and bring that to the prayer table? Are we willing to get a prayer circle of intercessors who's going to break through that strong man? Or is it the world's problem? I don't get a lot of people to weigh in on this type of subject matter. I was nearly ousted from a church for talking about it years ago. To our young people. But you know why I talked about it with them? Because they asked me. Because they asked me about it. See, there are certain things that is like, I don't know, it's taboo, it's forbidden in the church world, and we don't want to talk about these things, but they're happening all around us. Children know about it oftentimes before we know about it because it's going on in their schools. It's going on college campuses. It's happening at Christian academies. It's happening at Catholic schools, Lutheran schools, but we don't want to talk about it. Why? Why? We don't want to help people be free? Or are we just that fearful? I don't know. I don't know. But it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. Day after day, week after week, month after month. As soon as we think we've buried that monkey, it rises up again. We, the saints, are supposed to be the salt of the earth. We're supposed to exercise dominion. God gave Adam dominion in the garden. And then when Adam sinned, and that power and authority was taken away from him, God loved us so much until he found a way to give it back to us through his son. And then he appointed us again to have dominion in the earth over everything. As it is in heaven, so let it be on earth. We're supposed to have heaven here on earth. But society all over the world would just become a hotter mess. You know, I keep talking about these things, and this was never my agenda from the beginning. This was never my agenda from the beginning. But it keeps coming up again and again. So I feel that the mandate is on me to talk about it, to say something about it. And God is helping me because I have to completely tell my story. Why didn't I report it? I did. Was I believed? Yes and no. The authorities believed me because the evidence was there. My leadership did not believe me. Or should I say, maybe it wasn't that they didn't believe me, but they blamed me. And so that made me run and hide, and that made me keep it to myself for 40 years. And now it's time. And so, in the right setting, and at a time on Facebook Live, coming to you soon, I'll be able to share my story. But why didn't I? Because I was afraid. Because I thought no one would believe me. Because it seemed just so unreal, incredible, just not incredible in a good way, of course. Like I couldn't believe that this happened to me. I did not invite it. I didn't ask for it, but yet it happened. And so I didn't tell. After I told, initially, I didn't tell. I didn't speak of it again for 40 years. And all of these things in society are a reminder to me every day of what I endured all those many years ago. A young girl, not really an adult. I wasn't 21, but it happened. And it was the most violent thing that has ever happened to me in my life. I couldn't even call the hotline. Rape hotline, I couldn't call. It took me 39 years to call the hotline. And I finally did. And I cried more than I talked, more than I reported. But it was time. And I guess it's still time to help free someone else, encourage someone else, to let someone else know that it is okay and that you can get through it and that you can experience healing. Don't allow anyone to ever make you feel like it's your fault, that you caused it, that you invited it, that you wanted it. 9-year-old doesn't know what that's all about. And even an adult, experienced woman doesn't have that mindset that this is something that she wants. It is not about the act. It is not about the physical act, but it is about a sense of empowerment, and for some, even achievement over someone that they see as less than their equal. Sometimes women are able to fight back. Sometimes they're not, because a gun might be held to their head or a knife to their throat, or it's a family member or a person that they respected before this incident, and the threats they make sometimes are against their very lives or the lives of their family members or their children. It is the most demeaning, demoralizing experience that any individual can go through. And you don't just get up and go wash and it's over. It's not how it works. It takes more than soap and water to get rid of the dregs of an unwanted, non-consensual sexual invasion of your body. And that's just the physical part. The mental and emotional part can take years to get over, to get past. Even though, like I say, you go on in life and, you know, you marry or you have other significant relationships and you engage in a consensual relationship. It's absolutely, positively not the same at all. And for some, they can't take it that far. Not for a long time, because of the memories that it drags up. The hurt, the shame, the embarrassment. The smells, the sounds, whatever was going on in the background, a train going by, street lights blinking on, garbage. You'd be surprised at the things that invokes those memories all over again. I hope so, Rashonda. I really do. It is my goal. It is my goal to help women find their voice. And after finding their voice, to receive their healing, to come back to wholeness, to come back to being. One of the things that I think bothers me the most is that the younger women that it happens to, and the young boys that it happens to, because their innocence is snatched away from them. And they're too young to know who they are. They haven't gotten to that part of their lives yet. They don't know who they are. And to have something like that happen to them, and their innocence snatched away before they can even form an opinion about who they are or who they want to be. And to have this heaped upon them at such a young age, and it manifests in so many different ways, trying to receive healing, it manifests in so many different ways. And so some people, some women become promiscuous, always trying to gain the approval of a man. Because it was a man that did the damage. But if it was a man that they respected, someone that they knew, a family member or a trusted person, then they find themselves stripped of their own identity, and somehow it becomes twisted. And instead of searching for themselves, they're virtually trapped in that scenario. This is the only way that I can be pleasing to someone, is to do this. And so they enter into a life sometimes of promiscuity. They enter into a lifehood of being people pleasers. It might not happen during sex, but they always want to please people, so they always agree to things that they normally wouldn't. They take on more than they can handle. They bite off more than they can chew, because that is one way that they feel validated. Isn't that twisted? That is so twisted. But I sometimes feel that there aren't enough of us talking about it. There aren't enough of us doing anything about it. And so it becomes this cesspool of shame and degradation, and it just becomes a downhill slide for so many women. And we enter into relationship after relationship after relationship, looking for the right fit, because of something inexcusable that happened at an age and at a stage where we didn't know ourselves. And for women that suffer through this in their marital relationships, that is physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse, and sometimes spiritual abuse. 5 in 1, 4 in 1, 3 in 1, doesn't matter the numbers. But then all of those layers have to be peeled back and removed. You have to walk through each one of those scenarios before you can even begin to be healed. You know, it's like when you're preparing a meal and it calls for onions, and sometimes we take the onion out, and as we cut off the outer portion of the onion, sometimes we figure out that we have to peel back a layer, because sometimes maybe on the outside it's gotten a little mushy or it's been a little bit bruised. I know you've had this experience when you've been cooking, ladies, and so you have to peel back the onion to get to the good part, the part that's usable, that you can actually put into your recipe. Sometimes that's how we are when we've been abused. We're like that onion. You have to peel off the outer skin that looks battered and bruised, or take the flip side of it. Sometimes you have an onion that looks good on the outside, and you get to the core to find that it's on its way to being rotten. It's brown, it's watery, it's no good. We can be one of two of those places. We can look good on the outside and be jacked up on the inside. Or our outside can be jacked up, and it takes so much to get our inner core together. I don't know why it's not addressed more. Maybe it is addressed more and I just don't know about it. Maybe I'm the one that's in the dark. I tend not to think so, though, because of what we see in the news media every day. And it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. Just when you think it's over, it rears its ugly head again. Oh, Lord. Need so much help. So I say to you, those that are watching, those that are watching undercover, that's fine. Those that may watch the replay, and those of you that might catch it on YouTube later. First, thank you for being a part of my viewing audience. Thank you for chiming in. And for those of you that have your own story that maybe you're brave enough to share, you can share it incognito. You can share it anonymously. I would never betray the confidence of a person who's not yet ready to go public. And I completely understand. As I said, it has taken me 40 years. I couldn't have said this 10 years ago. My children didn't know. My family didn't know until last year. And so I now realize that I have a greater responsibility to share it. And I will. But you can feel free to inbox me. You can feel free to email me. You can do so. You can inbox me here on my fan page. You can email me at VSETC. It's an acronym for my fan page name, Victoria's School of Etiquette Training and Consulting. VSETC, the number 16 at Gmail. Victoria School of Etiquette, the number 16 at Gmail. The acronym VSETC 16 at gmail.com. You can inbox me here privately if you need to talk, if you need to cry, if you just need me to listen. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that for you. I wished that someone had been willing to do that for me. But I've gotten to this crossroads now, and it's okay. So I pay it forward to my sisters. And so again, if you want to inbox me privately, or if you would like to email me to share your story, to talk, to cry, for me to listen, I am there for you. I am there for you. And so I appreciate you for being here. Like I said, thank you for all of the comments. Thank you for weighing in. Thank you for liking and sharing. For those that will be watching on YouTube, thank you for subscribing to Victoria School of Etiquette. I appreciate your listening ear and your shoulder on tonight. So thank you for being a part of our viewing audience. This is my evening show. I always entitle it Bedtime Chronicles, the ongoing series of lessons learned, daily inspirations, and weekly motivations. And this keeps coming up in my spirit again and again. And so when I think I'm done, I find out that I am not. So here I am again. It's usually in the evening because this is adult subject matter, and I really don't want minors weighing in. I really don't want minors weighing in, but it's Facebook too. So if you are under the age of 18 and you have an experience that you would like to share or to talk about, because things happen in date rape, I haven't addressed that scenario yet, but I will. And so if you'd like to share your story, or if you just like to comment privately on mine, please feel free to do so. Again, the information, contact information is email me at vsetc16@gmail.com, or message me privately here on my fan page. So again, this is Lady Victoria with Victoria School of Etiquette. Thank you so much for being a part of our viewing audience and sharing our platform. Please like and share and hit the subscribe button. Until the next time we chat, I want you to be in your best etiquette health, and we'll talk again very soon. Good night and rest well, everyone. God bless.